Okay, I am recording this once again, watching myself go through making the pipeline settings menu. And once again, OBS is just the most unfinished product I've ever used. It got all the way to the end and didn't capture anything from my mic. Okay, so I'm going to try and remember everything that I just went over, but I doubt that I will. But the first important thing was that, well, first off, so the whole clip here is me making a pipeline settings menu, something that you can use to launch from the toolbar or the launcher that I made previously and set various values in the pipeline. For example, if you deploy this to a team and everybody has different installation locations for Maya, Unreal, etc., and we probably need to keep track of where those are on a per user basis, so it'll look at the user folder for the config to know where to launch. And if you do have consistent machines, then it'll just use the one in the pipeline files. So I have this constants.py file, which is all the constant variables, and this is kind of the in-between where it'll have some fixed values and some values based on the configs, but it's a constant variable reference that all of my scripts can end up referencing. So throughout this, I'm trying to figure out the best way to store those based on some of the values being dynamic, which might sound a little bit oxymoronic that it's in a constants file, but the point is that the variable reference is constant. The value might not be. So I can just plug in this path, and the path will always figure itself out, and I don't have to change it in various scripts. So here I'm getting to work on the class. Just muting in between here because I'm coughing a little bit, so I hope the mic, it's a button on my headset, I hope that doesn't really come through. And briefly deciding what the layout is going to be here. And as I usually go through most of my Qt classes, making them, I kind of have the same design pattern, which is there are three broad sections to the class, which is the construction section, the front-end function section, and the back-end function section. And in the construction section, that is broken down into three steps: the create widgets, create layout, and create connections, where creating the widgets is declaring and making each widget element, and the create layout is laying them all out in the UI space, and then the create connections is binding whatever inputs to whatever functions I want based on, you know, the actual behavior of the tool. And I try to do that as much as I can for most classes, even like component classes, except if a component class is small enough, then I just kind of put it all into the init. And yeah, so just going through and doing that. And then my naming convention, which doesn't add a whole lot of informative stuff, but it's like a prefix that's an abbreviation of the class, the component class. So a button is BTN, lineated is LE, HLayout is horizontal box layout, and underscore, and then the name of the thing. And yeah, so just going through and laying it all out. Normally, so at work, I work in previs and postvis, techvis, virtual production, you know, at a film studio, and there, for the longest time for pipeline development, it's basically been entirely based off of artist feature requests. And that pipeline is very lightweight because it needs to move very, very rapidly, but pipeline development was entirely motivated based on workflow requests from artists, which sort of meant that in the very beginning, there was never really a good framework that ever was developed. And so contrast to here, I'm taking a little bit of time to do some unexciting stuff like this pipeline settings menu. And sorry, just turn around to some noise behind me. And the launcher, the configs, just setting up a little bit of framework stuff so that way then that's there and I can add to it as I need or scale to it as dynamically for whatever. As I said in the last video, I don't really know how many DCCs I'm going to support, so here, this isn't really dynamically built. I'm kind of laying everything out by hand, but at least it's grouped in a way that's pretty easy. And I usually pretty aggressively docstring things, although I've recorded a lot of videos already and just haven't done the commentary over them. I don't really do that in the recording. I usually just go back through and do it afterwards because it's really boring to watch. But yeah, so here I was looking away for a little bit. I'm not sure if I've already tried showing the UI or not, but just going through and doing the save settings, and like I said, going back and forth between the UI and the constants.py file to understand what do I need to save and how do I want to save it, such that the constants file can easily get it. And there's the UI. And last time I did this recording, I had made a comment about how I might go through and redo this again, or at least parts of it, because right now it assumes that the installs are consistent, or the settings would be consistent across machines. So initially, the very first time you load up the UI, it's not going to look for your user stuff. But if that ever gets desynced, that would not be good the first time. So I might go back through and redo that. And I think, yeah, here it's that I'm setting it to save it on a per user basis, but I just don't have that functionality put in yet. So I keep having to flip that value back to the inverse of what it was, just so I can keep testing the UI. But yeah, with the notion that I need a little bit of framework stuff, not a whole lot, because I don't think this pipeline is going to be super grand. It's just kind of a hobby thing, but that just means that these first few videos are kind of boring. Like if you want to see like assets get moved from program to program or something like that, or tools in like Maya or Unreal, this is a necessary step, but it's kind of boring, and I didn't really want to exclude it. I'm trying to get as much of the code writing on video as I can. And I think one of the errors that I'm running into, I can't quite remember, and I just watched this a second ago when I tried recording this the first time. In the previous video, I think it was the previous video, I can't remember, I drag and dropped in like it's the IO utils library. I have a couple of, throughout these videos, I kind of just drag in some like really generic libraries for just IO stuff. So in this one, it's like really generic. It's just like safely creating and deleting folders, creating a folder by date, getting usernames, renaming files, deleting files, importing and exporting data from JSONs. And originally, I'd used it for quite a while, but all of the path management was like pure strings, and I had switched it to a pathlib based management recently, and I just hadn't quite weeded out all the bugs. And I think I might have spotted one here and was fixing it on the fly. And again, a little bit of going back and forth, deciding how I want to do stuff. I know I've said that like 3 times already. But it's an 11-minute video that I'm watching, and I'm 8 minutes and 50 seconds through, and I've kind of run out of stuff to say. And one problem here that I could run into that I don't really spot for a little bit of time is that I'm actually just checking to see if the check or the radio box button, if the radio button exists at all, instead of checking to see specifically if it's checked. But there we go. Basically got it working and hooking it up to the main toolbar, and now it saves to the configs to either directory. And there we go.